Today on the podcast, at last, we get to have Rich Grogan on the podcast. He's a Christian, he's an author, an empowerment speaker, content creator, coach, martial artist, author of the Bullyproof series for kids. Fascinating dude. We're very excited to learn about him, his story, and his very important message for us and the youth of America. Stick around.
Welcome to the CrossFit Edwardsville Community Podcast, where we hear and learn from our coaches, CrossFitters, and Glen Ed community leaders. Now, here are your hosts, Dallas and Greg.
What is up, CFE community? It's Coach G. I'm the GM at CrossFit Edwardsville. As you guys know on the podcast, we meet, learn about our CFE CrossFitters, meet and learn from our CFE coaches, and occasionally meet and learn about Glen Ed area business leaders. I am very excited to, at long last, welcome the man, the myth, the legend, Rich Grogan, to the podcast. Rich, welcome.
You give me goosebumps over here. Thank you very much. Truly honored to be here, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of your group. I'm honored. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. So to our audience, if you guys don't know, Rich is also the author of the Bullyproof series for kids. This includes books, podcast, videos, speaking presentations about becoming bully proof. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means today on the podcast. We'll also learn about Rich's entrepreneurial background, his present endeavors, his future pursuits, and how he may be able to help you or people you care about become more bully proof today. Be sure to stick around to the end, because hopefully on the podcast, Rich will share some exciting stories of some of the amazing people he's met, including Tim Tebow, Tybo, founder Billy Blanks, and my personal favorite, the legendary Master Ken. So hopefully you guys are ready. Rich, are you ready?
I'm ready to rock and roll. Let's go, baby.
Let's go. So we'll start with some easy questions. So who is Rich Grogan today, and who was he when he was growing up?
Well, my book, I'll give a quick plug for it since you already mentioned it. I'll bring it down. It's Becoming Bully Proof. And essentially, you see the two characters on the front here. Let me find. There was me as a kid. Not a lot of confidence, didn't believe in myself, pretty much projected weakness, walking around with my head down and shoulders. I grew up poor on a farm. We had a milk cow. Even at 8, 9 years old, I'm milking a cow and shoveling horse poop, baling hay. And my dad was a Vietnam vet, so he was rarely around. And he was an over-the-road truck driver when he got back from Nam. And he was part of the 101st Airborne. And that Johnny Cash song, A Boy Named Sue, could have very easily been A Boy Named Richie, because he was never around, but he had high demands. And growing up poor on a farm, obviously, and me being that little guy right here that didn't believe in myself, that led to relentless bullying. People would say, kids, what's that smell? Oh, it smells like cow poop. It must be Richie coming. He's so poor he can't even afford milk. And I didn't have the confidence to stand up for myself. So I was like, stop, why are you doing that? And like many of us who were bullied, you plant those seeds in your mental garden, and they're there forever. It's hard to dig out. And a lot of presentations I give, I mention that the meanest bully is not the bully from 6th grade or from high school or at work or even online. The meanest bully is the one right here in our mind, because that's
for sure
every single day. It holds us back with fear, negativity, self-doubt, limiting beliefs. And then the more we feed that, the more it's going to eat us up. And it holds us back from being what I like to say, the champion that we were born to be. We were afraid to utilize our unique God-given talent to be the hero that God intends for us to be. So that was Richie Grogan growing up. Everybody called me Richie. My parents still do. This one over here is the, right there. That's the hero that we all have inside of us. We just have to project that out. So that's kind of why the illustration on the book is that way, because it has so much deep meaning to me. So the book is all about me as a kid meeting me 40 years later, and we go on a journey together where the older me is teaching the younger me everything I wish I would have known. Number one, about believing in myself, standing up for myself, and that I am a priceless gift from God, just like each and every one of you out there. We have to believe that, because if we don't, we're going to be walking around as a victim. And when we portray ourselves as a victim, society is going to make sure that we are a victim. But we have to unleash that inner warrior to be who we were born to be.
I love that. And I could resonate with this story too, because when I was coming up, I was small, I was frail, I was weak, I was insecure, I was an easy target. And when I look back, it definitely drove me, and we'll get into this a little bit too. Part of what has drawn me to gym culture and what has drawn me to combat sport is that I didn't want to be the easy target anymore. I didn't want to be vulnerable anymore. And it's really cool when you do get to that point where the bully out there doesn't scare you anymore, but also the bully in here, there isn't one anymore. Now the person you have inside believes in you and has that empowered identity that I could be a force for good and I'm not an easy target. So we'll get into that too. What drew Rich Grogan to martial arts, and how did you get started? Kind of share that origin story with us, Rich.
Yeah, Carlos Norris, Chuck Norris, him and Bruce Lee. And it's kind of nice because I'm in the same organization, or was for a number of years, that Chuck Norris was in. So he was one of the first Americans to get his black belt in the Tung Sudo Mudokwon. So that's kind of cool. He's a brother in the martial arts. His head instructor was my instructor's instructor. So that's kind of a cool path there. But it was all about seeing Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee do those cool kicks. And, they were tough and, nobody messed with them. So I was like, I want to be like that. And because with Chuck, being in Texas, cowboy, I was a Cowboys fan because I grew up on a farm and always wore the cowboy hat and everything else. So, and always wears boots, right? So I wanted to be like Carlos Norris. So that's what kind of did it. And jumped right in. And I had actually stopped training for a couple of years because I wanted to pursue my career as a professional hockey player. That never worked out, but that's okay, probably for a good reason. And then I was 19 years old and actually saw the movie Bloodsport with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And that I was like, oh, I am in, and I am opening a martial arts academy, and this is going to be my life. So that's kind of how that path went with that. And been with it now, I guess, grand total of like 42 years, been teaching for 35.
Wow, man, that's amazing. And this leads neatly to my next question. I love learning like the origin of the entrepreneur, like kind of share your entrepreneurial background and starting your first academy.
Yeah, well, I had a variety of jobs. The hard work ethic on the farm is what built the foundation. So I try and encourage parents all the time. Be with your kids, give them chores, give them responsibilities, give them jobs. And if you want to give them allowance, so be it. I mean, that's entirely up to you, but make them earn it every step of the way. Because what you're doing is you're establishing a foundation. And I believe every single day we're working one of two muscles. I'm not talking about the show muscles or the glam muscles. I'm talking about the perseverance muscles, the perseverance to get back up, when, not if, but when life knocks us down, or the give up and quit muscles. So the better job we can do as parents of establishing that, along with good manners, discipline, and respect, which they all kind of tie in together early, the foundation's going to be there for them to have a good work ethic. And I'm telling you what, that's going to lead to them standing out in the crowd for the simple reason nobody does it anymore. Making eye contact, shaking hands properly, saying please and thank you, holding the door. To me, those just should be everyday values. But unfortunately, they're rarely taught anymore, and they're definitely even fewer times are they displayed. So when a child or a teen or even an adult is doing it, people are like, holy cow, what planet are you from? Well, it's the planet we should all be from. But I just tell them it's easier than ever to stand out in the crowd now by doing those core values of respect,
Absolutely,
honor, integrity. So the entrepreneurial journey kind of started. I don't know. As a kid, I didn't know, but I always had these dreams that I would own my own horse farm, or I would own this, or I'd own that, without even knowing. I just knew that I liked the feeling like I could do something that others couldn't, and then showing others how to do it. Even though that was one of the areas where I actually, as much lacking in self-confidence as I had in a number of other things, that was one thing that gave me drive. When the city boys would come over, as bad as it was, I'd show them how to shovel horse poop or bale hay or how to feed the cows and whatever else. And I felt good. Like I can show them something they don't know. So that was kind of the start. And then with the martial arts, I felt really good about the reason I was doing it. Well, at first, I guess the reason I was doing it was to every bully I saw, I was going to get vengeance on. So maybe that wasn't the best starting point. But in the end, I learned what martial arts was all about, which is all about helping you become a better person inside and out, not just beating the tar out of somebody. And
sure.
mindset earlier. In bully proof, that whole concept, it's got to be from the inside out. You can't fix the outside world if you're a mess inside. And Bruce Lee's instructor, Yip Man, once told him, said, Bruce, you can defeat 1,000 men, but until you conquer your own demons, you're never going to be at peace. And
right.
That weighed heavily on every time I say it, I get goosebumps because I think how that impacts my life, because I got to remember that myself.
Absolutely. So your bully proofing message is an important one, and I think it's kind of become your rallying cry, is helping people to become more bully proof. What has been your audience's response to the bully proofing message?
Well, and by saying bulletproof, that's kind of where I got the idea from, because I call it your bully-proof armor, and your bully-proof armor is like your bulletproof. And Jack Canfield once said, you would never go outside in your underwear. Well, don't ever go outside or online now without your bully-proof armor on. And your bully-proof armor is that Teflon shield, that empowerment. And I've actually rebranded with the last, about 6 months now. And a term I often use, I changed my podcast name to that, is Warrior Confidence. And we've upped it to Warrior Confidence Unleashed, because I want to dig in and get that inner warrior out, and then unleash that inner warrior to develop that confidence. And that's what really strengthens that bully-proof armor. It's that belief in yourself, that self-worth, to know that, hey, regardless what somebody says about me or thinks about me, I know what's true about me. And that's one of the hardest things to do for a lot of people, especially if you've been bullied in the past, because we oftentimes put more value, more stock, and more into what someone else says.
More weight.
More weight. That's the word I was looking for. Weight. Yeah. Than what we know to be true about ourselves. And why do we do that? Well, we do that when we truly don't feel good about ourselves. And we think that everybody else is smarter than we are. I had a difficult time in school as a kid, a little bit of a learning disability. I was never diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, but I'm quite sure I have it, or had it and have it. But all those factors play in your mind. So you start thinking, well, I guess if they say that about me, they must be right, because they're smarter than I am. And then when they call you stupid and dumb and you get bad grades on your report card, you start believing all that stuff. Well, I call that weeds in your mental garden. And the longer you allow those weeds to grow, holy smokes, the harder they are to get out. But that's kind of the starting point. We got to dig those things out. Like if you're going to plant a garden, first thing you got to do is get the weeds out and till the soil to make sure it's fresh, to put the fresh seeds in order to grow what you want to grow.
To be clear, this is a message that's important not just for youth, but it's also important for all of us, because so many of us are our own worst enemy. I had a fascinating conversation this past weekend. One of the groups that I hang out with is a healthy eating nutrition group, Rich, and the topic of the day was, what is the story that you tell yourself about why you can't eat healthy right here, right now? Like, what's the lie that you tell yourself, or what untrue story comes up for you over and over and over, and it's reason why you're not eating healthy consistently? And it was so interesting to hear from all the guys in the group about what story they tell themselves, and they know it's not true. They know it's wrong, and yet so many of these patterns, thought patterns, behavior patterns, have been ingrained since we were young, and it can be very difficult to unlearn these thought patterns or to get out of these negative loops, right? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it's just like working a muscle. The more you work the muscle, obviously the stronger it's going to get. Well, the more you tell yourself a lie, the more you become a part of that lie, and you feel comfortable telling that lie as a security blanket. If someone were to take that lie away from you, now you feel naked and exposed. I want it back. I want it back. I know it's not good for me, but I want it back because I've grown comforted in this lie. And I always like to think lost my train of thought there. But it's the devil we know for most people, or the lie we tell ourselves, is far more comfortable than the truth or the heaven we don't, because we don't know what's out there. So it keeps us from taking that first bold, massive step, which is what it takes. Journey of 1,000 miles, you got to take that first step before you can take the second one. But that first one's the hardest one. But once you take that first one, oh boy, all right, I've taken the first one, let's take another one. And you get that law of inertia going, and then things happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's Dallas and I have discussed this on the podcast more times than I can count, that it really is helpful to identify if you have some sort of disempowered or victim mentality. Identify, okay, this is not who I want to be. But then also identify, who do you want to be? What is your empowered identity, so you can step into that? And this has been transformative for Dallas, and he's spoken about it on the podcast many times, where he has this exciting, compelling, amazing vision for himself. But every single day, he has to go and plant that seed in his mind all over again. He has to revisit it, and then throughout the day, water that vision in his own mind, because that is how you get the right garden to grow. You're constantly weeding out, to use your analogy, weeding out the negative, but then also intentionally watering the positive and revisiting, hey, this is who I am now. I am now, like, if I want to be this better version of myself, I picture how it feels to be that person, and I step into it right here, right now, to be that guy, because my family needs me to be that guy. My kids need me to be that guy. My employees need me to be that guy. I need me to be that guy. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, the reason I use the garden analogy so much, it's in my book, I bring it up in just about every speech I give. It's so basic, and people can connect and relate with that. A garden, if you do nothing with it, it's going to be overrun with weeds. But the first thing you got to do, if you decide you're going to go back to that garden or plant a garden, you got to get the weeds out. So I got part of the book as a little journal. It's called The Weeds, Seeds, and Trees. And the weeds is the first approach. And that was kind of brought apart by Zig Ziglar, talking about how you've got to get the mental right before you can do anything else. And Zig would often talk about the mental, spiritual, and physical, and he would put them in that order. Well, in martial arts, we got a martial arts triangle, and it's those three pillars or legs: mental, spiritual, and physical. But Zig had once said the reason he didn't put spiritual first, he said, because if you've got the wrong, you got too many weeds in the garden, and I forget his exact term, that's the way I connected with it, then regardless what seed you plant in there, what is a weed going to do? It's going to suffocate that seed, right? So we got to get the mind right first by clearing it out. Now, the unfortunate part is, and I had a lot of weeds built up for 40 plus years. It seems like, man, do I have to dig a weed every single doggone day? Well, the answer is, yeah, you may have to, but you keep digging it. And that's why I mentioned earlier about the perseverance muscles or the give up and quit muscles. And you got to work those every day, because one day you're like, you know what? I'm tired of having to mess with this. I'm tired of having to dig these weeds out. Well, if you just give up, that weed's going to take over. You have to get up every single day and fight that battle. Just like, man, do I have to fight the battle of getting up and going to the gym today? Well, yeah, you do. And my little is probably similar to yours. You got to, Mel Robbins wrote a great book called The 5-Second Rule. And she says, when in 5 seconds, the brain will talk you out of doing something that you know you should do, because it's a way of keep you safe. So the way I try and do it is I get up, get my drink fixed, and get my shoes on immediately. And I think, well, gosh darn, that's the hardest part, getting the darn shoes on and getting the drink made. So I did the hardest part. I might as well just go and work out.
Absolutely. I actually use that 5-second rule that I got from Mel Robbins every single morning when it's time to get up. I'm pretty proud too. Like, since adopting that, it was Mel Robbins, the 5-second rule, and it was also Bedros Keuilian from Gym Culture.
Next month, by the way, I'm going out to California to see him at a conference. Bedros.
Awesome. He said that his thing was never hit the snooze button, because it's starting your day with an act of procrastination. That resonated with me, so I adopted that. So I'm pretty proud. Like, I am 2 years sober from using the snooze button. Haven't done it. Really proud of that. But anyway, so for those of us, Rich, like we now have kids of our own. Maybe our kids have kids. Like we know that, like, bullying for us when we were coming up, obviously we have the bully within, and then we have the bully outside too. And we know that it's a little different. It's evolved over the years. I think that we can appreciate the difference, because in our world, it was like the bullying was right there with people around you. And if you weren't around them, you probably weren't getting bullied. But now with the advent of social media, well, I mean, it's probably more your place to say that bullying has evolved, because it can now happen even in your complete absence. in your perspective, how is bullying today different or the same as it was in years past?
Well, one of the things I definitely bring up a lot is I knew at 3:30 that bullying was over for me, and I didn't have to worry about it until the next day at school. Or if it was Friday, I was safe until Monday. Nowadays, the real bullying begins at 3:30 because that's when the kids get on their devices and get online. And due to the fact there's no consequence for action online, and people say things online that they would never say face to face, as ruthless as the bullying was face to face, it was never as bad as it was online. And the reason it's so bad online is the compound effect. Now, just a typical bullying scenario. Just say that you in Dallas, or for whatever reason, you got to hang up with me. So you're poking at me, you're doing this and that. Well, Dallas is standing there as an innocent bystander. Now he has two choices here. He can come to my side and try and help me, but if he does, that means you're probably going to turn on him. So Dallas is just going to play neutral, and then you may say something or this or that, or eventually he'll start laughing, and just by fear, he'll join in with you. Now it's 2 against 1. Well, that's terrible. That's 2. Now everybody part of the bullying, it's no good. Nobody feels good about it. Everybody standing around watching wishes somebody had the courage, the confidence to stand up and say, hey, that ain't funny. Knock that crap off. But they were afraid to do so because they didn't have enough confidence in themselves that the bully wouldn't turn on them. And it was always a thing, hey, man, we feel bad for you, but better you than me. That's in the real world. And online, now people start, same thing, but now you've magnified it by 10, 20, 100 people chiming in. So just the 2 of you start poking at me. Now your friend group jumps in. Well, they like you or they're intimidated by you. So they don't want to tick you off. So they're going to throw shots at me so they can be buddies with you. And then it compounds from there. And nobody shuts it down. So that one person just getting beat to a pulp and no one comes to their aid or rescue. And once again, it now gets to the point where good kids who normally wouldn't have said anything, they're like, well, everybody's doing it, so I guess it's really not that bad. And then they'll come up with a justification for it, like, well, you know, he is kind of a jerk, or he is this or that, or any lie they can tell themselves to justify that behavior. It doesn't mean they're bad people. Even bullies, it's a behavior. It's not a person. They're not a bad person. It's something they have learned, but it's a behavior that's never been corrected. So now it's out of control. And a behavior that's rewarded, and essentially if it's not corrected, it's rewarded, is repeated. And that's how it gets so much worse online. And that's why the teen suicide rate is the second leading cause of death, only second to number 1, which is accidental death, which is a hodgepodge of everything they can't identify.
Right, absolutely. And as a kid who was like in the first phase of my growing up, you know, I was in school, like public schools. Phase 2, I was homeschooled. But leading up to that, I was in schools, and as a kid who was bullied, I can speak to like the personal hell that can create for you, right? But I can also say that it shaped me in an important way. That my reaction, how I reacted to it as I grew up, was I didn't want to be vulnerable and weak and an easy target. So my reaction was, I'm going to go and I'm going to make myself strong and confident and capable and bully proof, to use your term. Like, it drew me to being stronger in the gym and combat sport. That was how I reacted to it myself. So in a weird way, it made me a stronger and better person that I went through that adversity. Now, that's not to minimize the impact of bullying on anybody, because I hate it as much as anybody because I went through it. I don't want anybody to feel that way. But if we have somebody out there, you're listening to this, or maybe it's you or somebody you know, they're being bullied, is there a positive mental reframe that they can begin to use as they begin addressing this problem? For me, it was, I got angry about this treatment. I got mad about being ostracized, and I used it as fuel to become better. But is there a mental reframe that Coach Rich would prefer, or is a better approach to this, if you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And thank you for asking. That's a great question. Because obviously I hated the bullying I went through, but it obviously formed who I am today. But a couple things can happen that if you don't deal with it. So I'm glad you asked that question. One, mine was always to outwork everybody. So I become addicted to, I couldn't control how my size, short guy, but I knew I was going to be the fastest on the hockey team. I was going to be the fastest on the baseball and the football team. I was going to work harder. I was going to be there first, leave last. And I don't care if people call me a brown nose. They bullied me anyway. So what the heck did it matter? But I was going to prove myself to the coach. So I kind of used all that as my Bobby Boucher from the Water Boy, my tackling.
Right.
The bad thing about that is if you don't have an outlet for that and you keep it all suppressed, then one of two things happens. Either, but statistics show the person takes their own life, or they go into a school and shoot it all up, or they just, and I had a situation when I was younger. Dad kept telling me, until you do something, this kid's going to keep doing it. I came in crying one day after the kid kicked me in the groin, and Dad goes, God dang it, I'm going to whoop your butt if you don't get out there and do something. Well, the kid ran right. Well, the next day, Dad was gone, but the kid came up again, and I grabbed this kid, and I had a Ralphie Christmas story moment on him. And bad though, it wasn't. It was the Ralphie things. I mean, but it ended up in the hospital, and I couldn't wait for my dad to get home because I did what he told me to do. We got home, and he wasn't happy. He beat the living snot out of me, and I'm like, Dad, I did what you told me to do. What are you hitting me? What are you doing? He goes, I told you to hit the kid, not to lose it and put him in the hospital. So that, by packing it all in and then eventually letting it out, had just devastating effects. So what that did for a number of years, it scared me to ever let it out because I didn't think I could control it, which is that other effect. So to answer the question, you got to get it out. Hitting stuff, like if you go to the martial arts academy or go to the gym and lift weights, that physical exertion is what helps beat that bully within. And it also, two things I evaluate on at the studio and even with athletes is attitude and effort. Those are the only two things we can really control. We can't control our size, our height, or how God made us, but we control our attitude, and the attitude's the fuel for the mind, the willingness to put in what needs to be done. And we know what needs to be done. We've talked earlier about lying to ourselves. We know when that's a lie. We know what we're capable of. We just need to push ourselves. And then the effort's just actually applying it and doing it. So, because I never evaluated kids by athletic ability or talent, it was always their attitude and effort toward doing anything. So by getting that out, having that attitude, that effort, like I said, hitting stuff or lifting weights, now you're feeling like, dang, I could lift that weight. I could do that. I could run that fast. I could hit that bag that hard. I must not be all bad. So what you're doing is you're building up your self-confidence, your self-worth. Once again, it's an inside-out job. But that was the kind of the first part, I guess. Well, the first part I should have said was communication. Parents, you've got to talk to your kids. And kids, teenagers that are listening, don't be so doggone macho and tough that you think you're too smart to talk to your parents, because you're not. If you're really smart, then you'll be smart enough to listen to what we're saying and talk to your parents and listen to what they say. Okay, so show us how smart you are. But communication is key. And what I mean by that is, don't just ask your kid, hey, how was school today? Fine. Okay, back on your device. Man, freaking talk to your kids, communicate to your kids, dig a little bit deeper, watch their behavior, watch it. And then, you know what? This thing right here, parents, if you're paying for it, it is your device. You have the right to look at that thing at any given time. And if they got nothing to hide, then they got nothing to worry about. If they don't want you looking, you need to look. And some parents will say, well, I want to respect his privacy. All right, he's 12 years old. He's 13 years old. He's living in your house. He doesn't have the maturity for this doggone device to begin with. Neither do we, because how powerful it is. So look at the dang thing and help them out there. And when they give some retort, as they always will, not do, will, just say, look, it's because I love you. And how can you be angry at somebody who loves you as much as I do and just wants what's best for you? So that little temporary anger they may have right now is going to carry volumes of weight moving forward. So the next time you go to look at their phone, they're going to be a little less reluctant, or they're not going to have stuff on there they shouldn't have on there. So it's a win. But that's how you have to do it. So a little bit of discomfort, just like lifting weights, a little bit of discomfort, but we know the end all is for the best. So step outside that comfort zone, that little discomfort when you talk to your teens or about whatever it is, dig a little bit deeper to open up that conversation. Because a fact is, if they can't communicate with you at a young level or a teenage level, then they're not going to communicate with you when they got major problems later on in life.
I love that whole message, and I resonate with it, because especially as parents, it often takes courage for us to do the uncomfortable things, to do the unpopular things. And it's all done in love. And hopefully with you and your kids, to our audience there, you and your kids, hopefully you've established a pattern that everything that you're doing is done through love in a caring way, but also with a firm understanding you are the parent, you are the leader of the household, and sometimes that means doing unpopular things. Doing the unpopular thing might be being very involved in your child's internet, social media experience, being very present there also, and not actively turning a blind eye. Because it does take guts to do this stuff with our kids. You know what I mean? Good chance they push back on it initially. Good chance that they're not feeling that vibe, you know?
Now, my youngest son, Emmett, he's 14 and he doesn't have social media. And it's like, oh, well, why he doesn't have it? Now he's got, for his hockey team, he's got the Team Stream app, which, you know, when the players connect and this and that, but he doesn't have social media. There's, and YouTube, I've got YouTube on the TV. He can watch some different stuff on that, but it's monitored. And it's not that I'm sheltering him from the world. I mean, I've had the talks with him, so he understands, but I'm just not exposing his mind or planting negativity in there that doesn't need to be there. And plus, I don't want him becoming addicted to the device at his young age, because as adults, unfortunately, we're addicted to the gosh darn things. And every time I bring that up, I usually always get a comment, well, I'm not addicted. Well, you tell me, when's the last time you walked from one room to the house, in your house, one room to another, without your phone in your pocket or carrying it? Well, and what's the first thing you do when you wake up? You look at a device. If you have a drink of alcohol, last thing you do before you go to bed, and the first thing you do when you come up, you're addicted to alcohol. Well, we're addicted to the device. Now, I'm not pointing fingers. I got problems with it too. I'm just bringing light to the situation to help you understand how powerful it is, but also to let you know, man, that is your device. I'm just telling you from the horrors I've seen with kids. And there are pedophiles, predators, groomers, sickos out there that are lurking everywhere for your kids. And they know how fragile their ego is, how fragile their self-esteem is. And what these sickos do, they manipulate their little minds. And we even had somebody at our martial arts academy, very confident kid. And the mom came in and said, oh, please, you know, I was embarrassed to say anything, but can you please talk to him? He thought it was a 13-year-old girl. And next thing you know, the guy's sending him pictures. The guy, it's a male, sending pictures naked and saying he wants to meet and don't tell your parents. And I'm like, holy freaking cow. So, I mean, I'm glad the mom told me how sorry it was happening to the kid, but we addressed the situation. And then I didn't use his name, or like I'm not using it now, but we brought it up to the rest of it. And I had 2 or 3 parents within that week that I brought it up to the class. They're like, oh my gosh, I took your advice. I looked on the phone and I said, hey, who's this? I don't know, Emily. Oh, it's some girl. Where's Emily from? Well, the mom dug in a little bit deeper and found out it wasn't freaking Emily. It was some sick son of a gun, 40-year-old pervert. That gets my blood boiling, boy. Gosh darn. I have no tolerance for bullying, period. And I certainly have nothing abusive. When people abuse men, women, you know, children, or whoever it is, to me, that's the lowest form of scum on the earth, because you're taking advantage, using your power to manipulate somebody else who's weaker than you are, to hurt them for your own sick purposes. So I didn't mean to go down that road. That gets me going now.
You get so fired up, and it's okay, because like there are 2 thoughts that I want to share on the topic as well. The first is that, using that mental garden analogy again, this is true for all of us. Like what grows there is what gets planted there. And if you start your day looking at your phone, it's going through email, going through text messages, going through social media, it's a complete crapshoot as to what's going to end up landing in you. And it's just a good life practice. One of the boundaries that I've created for myself that's been really helpful for me is I don't check my texts. I don't check my email. I don't check any social media outlets until my whole morning routine is complete. I don't want to give the opportunity to some random out there to jack up my day, hijack my thinking. Everything that I listen to, I do listen to a lot of YouTube videos in the morning for motivation, to get myself in the right mind space for whatever I got to do that day. Whatever you pour into your glass is what you will have to share from your glass. And it's very important for all of us, parents, youth. It's really important for all of us to be very, very judicious and filter what we allow to go into here. Some TV shows, some movies, some music we shouldn't be listening to because it plants the wrong seeds in our own minds. This is as true for us as adults as it is for youth. So we have to lead that by example. And the second thing I want to share is, especially if you're the man of the house, if you're the guy, there was a very famous child sexual predator that they interviewed, and you might have heard this before, Rich, too. They interviewed him and they said, what is it that you look for when you're targeting a victim? And he said, the number one thing I look for is the absence of the man in the home, because if there's an absence of the male figure, if there's not a strong, protective male figure there, it's much, much easier to make these inroads and turn a child into a victim. So if you are the guy of the house, it's important that you're modeling a strong masculine role model for your family, because not only is it a good example for your kids to who should they be when they grow up, but it also helps to ward off the predators. You are the first alert system. You are the line of defense. Do you know what I mean?
No, that's great points. So I wanted to give a quick plug for my YouTube channel, which got over 600 videos on there now, and I've hired a company that does all the editing stuff. So please kindly subscribe to that. It's Grogan's Bully Proof, or you can get there by Warrior Confidence Unleashed. And so start your day with those videos. It's all about that self-empowerment. Film the videos that I like to watch myself. But the second point I wanted to bring up, especially I give an analogy. If you want strawberries, then what type of strawberries? You got to have a strawberry plant. And to get that plant, what kind of seeds do you have to plant? You have to plant strawberry seeds. I mean, it just makes sense, right? And if you plant onion seeds, I don't care what kind of rain dance you do, you're not getting strawberries, you're getting onions. So the same thing here. We plant negativity and self-doubt and fear and limiting beliefs, pretty much absolutely everything that the mainstream media, or I like to call the devil's workshop, what they do is they plant those things in your mental garden. Now, here's the craziest thing about that. When you're watching the devil's workshop, what kind of commercials pop up? Commercials on digestive system problems, headache problems, anxiety problems, sleep problems. All those problems pop up. Why? Because when you're in a panic, stress state of fear, the world's coming into the end. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? It's all fear. It's all doom. It's all gloom. Well, your cortisol is flushing through your body, and your digestive system shuts down. Your growth system shuts down. Your immune system shuts down. So all these protective systems that are supposed to function shut down. They shut down because the old caveman days, if you got a rush of cortisol, you may have to outrun a saber-tooth tiger or kill a saber-tooth tiger to live. Well, that cortisol chemical is still in our body, right? Well, in caveman days, regardless if we had to outrun or to fight off a saber-tooth tiger, we expended that energy through working out, exercise, running, whatever it was. The endorphins kicked in and flushed the cortisol out. Well, just sitting there on a couch or computer or laying in your bed on your phone, you're not exercising, you're not moving. So that cortisol is not flushed out. And if your digestive system isn't working, which by the way is your hardest working system in your body, then you're not sleeping very well because your digestive system's on end. Now you're all bowed up. Now you're nervous. Now you're panicked. Now you're stressed. Now you don't sleep very well. So you wake up the next day irritable and start the cycle all over again. So planting the seeds, baby, I'm not an expert at all this. I'm still struggling with it myself from time to time, but I just know the more I talk about it, the more I try and empower others, the more it's a good reminder for myself as well. Like, what are you doing? And don't be a hypocrite. You just told those folks not to do it. Don't you dare do it. So I encourage you to share, and not only you, Coach G, but those listening, to share it with someone else. Why? It's another reminder to yourself to make sure you're not doing it as well.
We all need that reminder. And to our audience here, again, if you're listening at Warrior Confidence Unleashed, where you can dig
Thank you.
into the extensive video library on topics like this from Rich Grogan. Let's talk about your role as a content creator, Rich. So tell us how you got started with content creation and what's been the toughest thing for you about being a content creator, and then what's also your favorite thing about being a content creator.
Yeah, that's it's funny. I've never really considered myself to be that word, content creator, but I guess I am. So thank you. The thing, we've all got a gift, all of us. There's over 8 billion people on this planet, but I always like to say there's only one of you. You've got a unique God-given talent, and as much as we're alike in a lot of ways, you've got a gift that I'll never have. Listeners, you have a gift that Coach G and I will never have. I want you to exploit and utilize that gift. Now, here's the thing about your gift, and I learned this from one of my mentors I work with, Chris Widener. He said, your gift is, well, the sad thing is, let me back up just a step here. Coach G, do you know what the wealthiest place on earth is?
The cemetery, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And why is that? Because
I couldn't do justice with the words. I'll let you describe it.
To put you on the spot there. I just talked about this the other day, so it's fresh on the mind. The cemetery is the wealthiest place on earth because so many gifts have been taken to the grave. So many songs have gone to the grave unsung. The next great singer, the next great architect, next great designer, next great musician or athlete, all took their gifts to the grave because someone told them they weren't good at it. Someone told them, or they had one failure or one setback. So you have a unique gift. It's your job to let that song out into the world. Are you going to have critics? Yeah. You put yourself out there regardless. You're going to have people taking pop shots at you. But I just want you to remember this one thing. Unfortunately, don't be mad and don't call them haters because don't sink to their level. People that are doing those things hate themselves enough. Don't add to it. But just remember that oftentimes their only taste of success will come when they try and take a bite out of you. So I'm not saying you allow it and put up with it. I got a little term I call love, block, and delete. So I get somebody that's throwing some nasty hate. It's not that I'm too big to accept criticism. If someone's going to help me, I'm willing to learn. But if someone's just going to try and bring me down in their cesspool, love. The reason I say love first, because God says we're supposed to love everybody, especially ourselves. So don't deal with that nonsense. Block them, delete the comment, and move on. Don't waste your time on it, simply because you'll get dragged down into over here when you should be focusing over here. Here's the people, and my wife reminds me of this all the time. You got millions out there that need your message, that love you. Why are you focusing on that one or two people over here? And it's my tackling fuel. My brain saying, well, I want to help that person. Well, you got to realize that you help everybody. If they're not willing to help themselves, yeah, you can try, but man, I was when you climb that ladder of success, reach one hand down. Abso-freaking-lutely. Reach one hand down and pull somebody else up. But you keep that other hand on that next rung, because if you don't, you reach down with both hands are going to pull you down. And it's like the crabs in the bucket. You'll never get out.
Right.
So content creation, kind of bringing out the gift back together. My thing is one, talking. Even in grade school, Richie talks too much. I don't know how many times I had to write sentences, but the teachers were telling me something. And the other thing is I've got a very, very creative mind. I don't say that to boast. I'm just saying that's my gift. But back to what Chris had said, my mentor, Chris Widener, he said, your gift can be your greatest strength, but if unchecked, can be your greatest weakness. So what I mean by very creative mind, I have a very, very difficult time finishing stuff. Like my book took me 8 years. Now, it should have been a lot sooner than that, but I just couldn't finish. I've got a couple programs that I'm having a very, very difficult time finishing. So I've got all these ideas. I've got 5, 6 different programs I'm working on at the same time, but my deficiency, if you will, is finishing. So I've got an Evernote, and I'm not boasting here. It's just my mind, how it works. 1,500 notes, and I've got 20-something journals and binders full of notes. And I keep telling myself, I need to go back through those notes. I need to start including those on the podcast and start putting them in books and in programs and stuff. But the mind is, and that's, I mentioned earlier about ADD and ADHD. I was never diagnosed with it, but I'm quite sure I've got it. Well, I used to think that was a curse. And now I think, well, it's what gives me the extra energy to do the things that maybe others can't do. But at the same time, if it's unchecked, like a fire, it's good to have a good fire going. But if you don't control that fire, what happens? It gets out of control and bad things happen. Well, the same thing. So back to the content creating question is, man, I create all kinds of ideas and stuff. It's a matter of finishing or implementing or putting together the final pieces is what I have the hardest time with. Like the reason I have 600 videos on my YouTube channel and only 400 and something subscribers is because for the last 12, 13 years, any video I filmed, regardless if it was good or bad, I just threw it on YouTube as a hosting site, just something to house the videos. Now, the last 3 months, I've hired a company and I've been putting more time in. You can see my screen in the back and I got my lights and the proper microphone and all that. But the editing, I would go nuts trying to edit each jump cut and all these other things and put the music in. So now I've hired a company to do that on the newer videos I'm putting out. So to answer the question, coming up with ideas, I mean, we could talk all day long. It's finalizing stuff and doing the other stuff, and then actually setting up a schedule to post. And that's a great deficiency that I have. And so I've hired other companies to do it. The video editing for YouTube, I'm feeling good about that company, but I've hired a couple of virtual assistants to kind of go on my behalf and post. I still haven't found one that I really feel comfortable with. I've been on Fiverr and Upwork, and I even hired another company that's called Gift of Time, and they all did good. It was probably my fault for not explaining what I wanted up front, but it's kind of difficult sometimes to explain what you want when you're really not sure what you want.
Well, on behalf of everybody, I want to thank you for doing the courageous thing and starting to channel all that creativity into a productive outlet and setting a good message, a positive message, and a constructive message. Because like my own bias is to believe that I believe our society needs strong male leadership and that message more than ever before. And this is kind of a fun lead in, by the way, to my next question, which is, you've met a lot of very interesting characters, a lot of very interesting male figures, including the legendary Master Ken, Frank Dux of Bloodsport, Master Billy Blanks, Tim Tebow, Tom Ziegler, Coach Nate Hearn. What are 1 to 2 of Rich Grogan's favorite stories from these encounters?
Oh, goodness. I wrote it down. Well, to kind of lead into that, I mentioned earlier about the media being the devil's workshop. So the media throws around the term toxic masculinity, which is the biggest propaganda bunch of garbage that anybody's ever said, because there's really no such thing as that. We need more masculine men out there. The people that are toxic weakness, because real masculine men that feel good about themselves aren't abusing kids, aren't abusing women, and aren't picking on and hurting people that are weaker than they are. That's toxic weakness. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. So I wanted to bring that up first, because we do need more masculine men, because men that feel good about themselves are respectful to women, respectful to kids. They hold the doors. They say please, they say thank you. They do the things. Why? Because they're masculine enough to feel good enough about themselves that they don't have to try and bully somebody weaker than they are. So scratch that. You hear toxic masculinity, I want that to plant a seed. That's a bunch of garbage. It's toxic weakness. And unfortunately, some very unhappy people that have a lot of ugliness in their heart come up with these horrible phrases to try and I don't know what they're trying to do. I mean, I guess we got to talk a whole other podcast on that, but I just wanted to bring that up. So be masculine out there, but know that you're being masculine to help, not to hurt. And that's the difference.
Amen to all of that.
So stories. Well, Master Ken, I went to, it was an event actually with Bedros Keuilian. It was called, he was a speaker at it, the Martial Arts Business Summit. And I'd never even heard of Master Ken before. This was 2012, maybe 12 or 13. Okay. And so all I know is we've got this martial artist, or this guy coming in to give kind of a keynote. We comes in, and now the organization, martial arts organization, I was part of for, oh goodness gracious, almost 30 years. Was very militaristic. It was true Korean based. No I used to, as an adult, get in trouble for laughing and joking and having fun with the kids in class. It was, you got to be stone faced, true Korean. You can't show any emotion because you show weakness and da 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 da. Now the same organization that Chuck Norris came up in, So the principles from the 60s were the same doggone principles they had even in the 2000s. And you stay true to the culture, but then again, you don't. You got to evolve and evolve. Well, anyway, Master Ken comes in and he goes, well, I guess nobody bowed us in, so I guess I'll do it. What kind of organization you freaking running here? Now, I got nervous and scared. I mean, seriously, I held my heart beating like, holy freaking crap, I should stand up and bow here because that's what I was used to from the organization I was with the whole time. And then he leads into some jokes, and I'm like, oh, but my heart was beating out of my throat. So he goes through this whole crazy routine. Oh, my God. And some of his very inappropriate jokes, but they're funny as heck. When I came in here, you guys, I expect you to jump. When you see an 11th degree black belt, you should jump to attention faster than Jean-Claude Van Damme hitting an 8-ball, or faster than Steven Seagal going through the all-you-can-eat buffet line. So to bring up Master Ken he's a kind of a parody martial artist. He makes fun of absolutely everybody, and his signature move is restomp the groin. Yeah. I met him in Vegas a few years after that, and he never broke character, but I briefly told him the story, and give me the eyebrow that he does and this and that, and I said, well, my kids who they like Master Ken, they would love to see you re-stomp my groin. Could that be arranged? He goes, yeah. You're asking me to stomp your groin? Absolutely. Yeah. We got a picture of him kind of acts like he's stomping my groin because that's his signature move. So that's a funny story with him. Frank Dukes, I met him, and he's a big man and very, very, very humble in Vegas at the Super Show. And I just went up and shook his hand to say, hey, thank you. I said, it's because you were the first movie I saw after my NHL career that never took off, ended, and I got back into martial arts, and it was because of Bloodsport. And so we did a little video interview, and that video interview is actually on, and so is the Master Ken one, and so is the one with Billy Blanks. But I did this with Frank Dukes, so that video is on the YouTube channel. You can check that out. And what a humble guy. He goes, that really means a lot when, I hear that. He goes, you think you're doing good. You think you're helping people, but, it's been a number of years, and sometimes you think maybe I'm not helping people anymore. And I said, oh, my gosh, man, you are. And he's the real deal. I saw a documentary that somebody sent to me after I posted the video with him, calling Frank Dukes a fake and all this stuff and this and that. And that goes back to the point, you're always going to have haters out there for whatever reason. Just know that something's wrong inside them, that they have so much hate that they try and bring somebody else down. And but it was a great conversation with him. And then I've had a couple different conversations with Billy Blanks, and come to find out Billy Blanks was in I knew he was in Tung Sudo, the style that was in for the longest time, but the second time I met him, I had my uniform on, and he came up to the first time I came up to him, just chatted with him. He came up to me because he noticed the belt, and because it was the same belt that he won, or that was awarded over in Korea. That's where I got my master's belt, was over in Korea, and we struck into a great conversation. So I did a little video interview with him, and at the end I said, thanks, Billy, for your time. And my little sign off is, all right, well, God bless you, God bless your loved ones. Please get out there and do what you do best. And Billy looks at me and goes, man, that's cool, dude. He goes, I liked you. And he gave me a big old hug. And the guy, big old freaking awesome Billy Blanks, he got really emotional because I mentioned God bless. He goes, it's just so good to hear you say that, because no one ever says that. I don't ever hear that. All the people that interview me and talk to me, no one ever says thank you to God or God bless. And I was like, well, get over here, big boy. And I gave him a big old hug. So here's something you may not even know, Coach. I'm going to get up for just a minute here. I've got, get up out of my chair here, exercise videos that I filmed in the late 90s, early 2000s called Kick to Get Fit.
Oh, wow. Let's go. the Rich Grogan exercise video series.
And the kids one. So I got another one, it's the safety and self-defense one. So the Billy Blanks thing happened. I've been planning this first video for, I don't know, oh goodness gracious, as long as I can remember. And I picked a filming date of January 9th, 1999. So 1/9/99. kind of light numbers. And well, September of 98, that's when Tybo hit the market. So Tybo is absolutely everywhere. And I'm thinking, I've been planning this video for a year and a half, trying to get all the funds together, trying to get the script together, trying to get the people together. And what the heck? And I thought, well, you know what? That's all right. I'll just ride his wave on in. Right. Well, at the time my video was filmed, Denise Austin had one out and everybody else had one out. And but I still gave it my all. But here's an original one. And on the back, there's one key element missing.
What's that? What's that?
The barcode. So I thought
yes.
I shot. I get in, and this was 99. It's not like the email, and we could email, but it wasn't anywhere it is now. I was using a fax machine from an old business I used to work with. I didn't have a fax machine of my own. So I'd go in there, and Ventura Distribution was a distribution company in California that did Tybo. And I had sent them a sample copy, and they said, okay, well, you know what? You're kind of different here with what you're presenting. It's still the kickboxing aerobic. We've got one shelf space. We need video. She said, but I'll tell you, you're missing a barcode. And I said, well, I don't even know what the heck's a barcode. And she says, well, the thing that they scan, you have to have that. And I'm like, well, how do I get that? Well, she was kind enough to help me. The links, I had to go and get this. And once again, this wasn't the internet like it is nowadays. Things take time. I had to go to St. Louis, Missouri and get with this code council company and then buy the code. And then they had to input the labels. Well, the whole turnaround time, and I expedited, FedExed everything, was 2 weeks. Well, I missed my opportunity and it closed. So I didn't, it was a tough loss. So I made sure I had the barcode on the second round of videos that came out. But it's by that time, the fade had it was 2002. I will say, though, the kids one is still, it's on DVD. It's still selling on Amazon. Like 1 or 2 a month. But I need to, and maybe just me talking about it, get these digitized and put on my YouTube channel for
Absolutely, yeah.
So, but that's the Billy Blank story. So I brought that up to him because buddies were saying we need to set up like a cage match between you and Billy Blanks and get all the publicity, go to charity and this and that. So I told him that too, and he was a really, really good guy. I really enjoyed the conversation with him. But I think the thing that touched my heart the most was when when I said God bless, he just looked at me and said, "Man, that's really cool," and kind of just the emotional impact came out. So I bring that up to our Christian listeners out there. That's why I wear my cross on the outside, not to intimidate or make anybody feel uncomfortable, but this is what I believe in. This is what keeps me right. I was baptized in 2017, and I know I've had a lot of good cornermen and coaches in my life, but now I got God in my corner. I just have to remember to call on him first when I've got difficulties and troubles. And I'll try and solve what I can on my own, but then realize, you know what, he's always there. And my grandma would always say, you'll never get a busy signal with God, but you got to be the one to reach out to him. He's not going to necessarily reach out to you.
I dig that. And this is fun because I think that for both of us, our faith is a very important theme of it directs both of us in everything that we do. It's actually how, to our audience, how Rich and I met. Shout out to Pastor Rick of Rick Martini's Tuesday morning small group, where I met Rich Grogan in the first place. And I have so many more questions that I'd planned. What's that?
Nathan Kirpan kind of put the stream together for us.
That's right. Nathan Kirpan formally introduced us, but we ended up in the same room at the same time at the Martini small group. So I had so many more questions I'd like to ask, but we're way over time right now. So in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead. We're going to move to my last question for Rich Grogan. Rich, if you could make only one statement to the world, what would it be? Or to put it another way, if Rich Grogan could choose one thing to say on a billboard that's going to be seen by thousands, maybe even millions of people, what would it say?
Believe in your unique God-given talent and unleash that warrior within to defeat the bully in your mind, to be the gift that God created you to be the hero and the champion that you were born to be.
He said that for us one more time.
Number one, believe in your unique God-given talent and then unleash that warrior within to defeat that bully in your mind. There you go. To be the hero, the champion that God meant for you to be. because the world needs your gift. The world needs your gift. So many people are struggling. So many people are in pain. And I know we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but this past weekend, I was in Miami for a speaking competition, and I actually was over 1,000 speakers there, and I'll brag just a little bit. I was proud of myself. I wanted to
do it. I give you permission. Go ahead.
Similar to American Idol for the American Speak Off. It's an event that Grant Cardone's putting together, and Pete Vargas, and Grant Cardone had brought up, look, there's American Idol for singers, there's Dancing with the Stars for dancers, there's America's Got Talent, and those are all good entertainment shows. He says, but they really don't provide a whole lot of ongoing value other than the mere entertainment. He said, we're speaking, everybody's got a story, and everybody's got a challenge or a struggle or a bully they've overcome, and those stories need to be told. So he's going to invest quite a bit in this Speak Off competition so more speakers can get their story out to the world to help empower others to overcome their fears, battle through their challenges, to unleash their inner warrior, to defeat the bully within, to be the champion they were born to be. So anyway, thank you, Coach T, for putting that up. Warrior Confidence Unleashed. I love it if you follow me on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, probably the biggest, the YouTube channel. I'm doing so much work with that, and I feel so strong about the videos that we're putting out. But if you want to see the 2 rounds of speaking competition, they're on my Facebook page. You can just go under Rich Grogan. Oh, and my books, they're available on Amazon, and you can go right to our website, grogansbullyproof.com or warriorconfidence.com. It all leads to the same place.
Proof or Warrior Confidence. Got it. And I appreciate what you're doing, Rich. I think it's really important to help as many people as possible to first defeat the bully inside and then become a force for good to protect the more vulnerable, protect the people out there that need people helping to help shield them from bullies. So winning the inner battle, but then also being an agent for positive change and for protecting people around us. I think is a really important message, and I thank you for sharing it. Thank you for hanging out with us on the podcast today. Thank you for, above all, for the gift of your time, your most limited resource of all. You could be anywhere in the world. You're hanging out with us, Rich. I thank you for that gift. And to our audience, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for your time and attention. Much love, much appreciation to you guys. God bless you all. We'll see you guys in the next episode of the podcast.